The body of the Honor Roll High School senior, who was on the swim team, according to his family, was found here in Lake Ray Hubbard nearly 3 months ago. And hand in hand since losing him, his loved ones are desperate for answers.
It's an accident. Why hide the clothes? Why flee the scene? Why toss Daniel Erving's cell phone out the car? Better yet, why do you have Daniel Erving's cell phone? Why go home and delete every text message, every communication? If you have nothing to hide and it's an accident, why delete the evidence? Why delete the text? Those are the answers we demand.
A reasonable-minded person would know. If you are not guilty of a crime, why would you throw away his clothes and delete messages and not even call his mother? I want justice for my son. I want justice for Daniel.
On the morning of April 13th, 2026, Tamika Erving woke up in Rowlett, Texas, with no reason to think anything was wrong. By nightfall, she would. She wouldn't be able to explain it to anyone right away. Not fully. Not in a way that held up as evidence. Just a feeling. The kind a mother gets when something in the ordinary rhythm of a day quietly shifts out of place. Her son Daniel left the house that afternoon the way he had 100 times before. Nothing about it looked different. And yet somehow, it was the last time. Welcome to True Crime Case. This is a true crime documentary about a mother who says she knew something was wrong before anyone else did, and a family that spent months afterward waiting for the rest of the world to catch up to what she felt on day one. Before the lake, before the investigation, before any of the questions that still don't have full answers, it's worth meeting the person this story is actually about. Everyone who knew him called him Mike. Not Daniel, the name on paper, but Mike, because that's simply who he was to the people around him. He was 18, a senior at Saxa High School, and by every account from the people who knew him best, he was building something. He swam competitively. He kept his grades up, genuinely not the softened kind of honor roll that gets mentioned for a camera, but the kind that comes from actually doing the work, week after week, without needing anyone to notice. His family has said he was preparing for a future in the military. His mother has called him her guardian angel, the kind of phrase people reach for when the ordinary words don't feel like enough. They've described him as steady, dependable, the kind of kid who didn't go looking for trouble, and who, by every account available, hadn't found any before that April afternoon. Some of what you'll hear in this story comes from documents, police reports, an arrest affidavit, a medical examiner's findings. That kind of information can be verified directly, sentence by sentence, but some of it is different. It's a mother's grief, spoken out loud, in her own words, at press conferences held months after her son's death. That's not something a records request can confirm. It's true in a different way. True because it's hers to say, and she said it more than once. On a fundraising page she later created, Tamika described herself as a single mother trying to process a loss bigger than anything she'd imagined. She didn't dress it up. She didn't need to. What she has said, consistently, is that she knew something was wrong the day Daniel left the house. Not weeks later. Not after any of what would eventually come out. That's worth sitting with, because on April 13th, 2026, nothing had actually happened yet that anyone could point to. No missed call, no warning sign. Just an ordinary Monday, and a mother's instinct that something wasn't right. That afternoon, Daniel left home with 2 people he knew, 19-year-old Lucas Roper and a second teenager, reported by different outlets as either 16 or 17, a detail that has never been resolved consistently and won't be invented here. Roper and Daniel had already been texting that morning, working out the plan. Nothing dramatic, just logistics. What time, who was driving, where they'd go. 3 teenagers, 1 car, 1 destination. Lake Ray Hubbard, a place that had drawn people from Rowlett for exactly this kind of afternoon, more times than anyone could count. For most of the town, it was an unremarkable stretch of water. Nothing about the day suggested it would become anything else. They ended up at a railroad bridge in the 6300 block of Miller Road, spanning the lake, the kind of spot used for jumping into the water below for years, without incident, by plenty of people before them. It's worth being specific about how this unfolded, because the details matter for everything that came after. All three teenagers climbed onto the bridge and jumped into the water below. Two of them, Roper and the younger boy, surfaced almost immediately, the way anyone would after a jump like that. Daniel did too, at first. According to the medical examiner's report, citing investigative information gathered afterward, Daniel surfaced once, called out for help, and then went under a second time. He did not come back up. That single detail, that Daniel called out, that there was a moment where a response was still possible, is the hinge this entire case turns on. There's no established motive behind what happened in the water itself, because no one has alleged the drowning was anything other than an accident. The Dallas County Medical Examiner's Office would eventually rule it exactly that. That part of this story has an official, documented answer, and it isn't in dispute. If a story like this is the kind you find yourself thinking about long after the video ends, this is a good moment to hit follow, because what happened in the next hour is where this stops being simply a tragedy and starts being an investigation with real, documented turns still ahead. Here is what the arrest affidavit says happened next. Daniel went under and didn't resurface. Roper and the younger boy did not call 911. They did not attempt to alert anyone at the lake. They got out of the water, gathered themselves, and got back in Roper's car. On the way out, not later, not after some period of reflection, but as part of leaving the scene, they took Daniel's clothes, which had been left on the bank, and threw them into the tree line near the bridge. As they drove away from Miller Road, the younger boy, allegedly at Roper's instruction, rolled down the window and threw Daniel's phone out of the moving vehicle. Then they drove back into Rowlett. They did not go to Daniel's house. They did not call his mother. According to reporting on the case, Roper went home that night as though nothing had happened. When detectives eventually interviewed both boys, weeks apart from the incident itself, their accounts lined up with each other in a way that corroborated the sequence. The minor told police it was Roper who threw the clothes. Roper, separately, admitted to instructing the phone's disposal. Investigators were later able to recover both items based on that information. There is a documented reason for the cover-up, one of the very few places in this story where a motive exists in the record instead of being something to guess at. In his April 20th interview with detectives, Roper said, according to the affidavit's paraphrase of his statement, that he was aware there would be an investigation into Daniel's death and that he didn't want to get into trouble. That is the stated reason for the cover-up, in his own account to police. It is not, and cannot be, a stated reason for the drowning, because nothing in the record suggests the drowning itself was anything other than what the medical examiner ultimately ruled. While all of this was happening, the drive away from the lake, the discarded clothes, the phone landing somewhere along a stretch of road, Daniel's mother didn't know any of it yet. She just knew her son hadn't come home. On April 14th, with no word from Daniel and no answer on his phone, Tamika filed a missing persons report with the Rowlett Police Department. 2 days later, on April 16th, Rowlett Police issued a public alert. Buried inside it was a detail that, in hindsight, stands out immediately. Daniel had left without his ID, without cash. Police and his own family both flagged that as out of character, the kind of small, specific detail that doesn't mean much on its own, but that a mother clings to when she's trying to explain a feeling she can't yet prove. The search that followed led to Marina Vista, in the Paddle Point area of the lake, where a Dallas Fire Rescue Water Recovery team found Daniel's body on April 17th, 4 days after he'd gone under. 4 days is a long time for a family to wait without answers. It's an even longer time to spend not knowing that the two people who could have shortened that wait, by making a single phone call from the water's edge, had already chosen not to. The medical examiner's office took more than 2 months from that point to finalize its official findings. When the report was completed, on June 29th, it confirmed drowning as cause of death and accidental as manner of death, while including the detail about Daniel surfacing once and calling for help, and the detail that the 2 others present had disposed of his belongings rather than reporting what happened. One more line in that report is worth noting in full. At that point, based on interviews already conducted, investigators recorded no current suspicion of foul play in the drowning itself, while explicitly leaving room for that to change if new information came to light. Not a closed door. A pause, officially written down as one, 3 days after Daniel's body was found, on April 20th. Dallas and Rowlett detectives went to Saxay High School and sat down with Roper. This wasn't an arrest. It was an interview, and according to available reporting, a voluntary one. And in that room, Roper told them almost everything, in sequence. The panic after Daniel went under, the decision to leave, the clothes in the tree line, the phone out the window. He also told them something that happened afterward, away from the lake entirely, that in the days following, he went into his own phone and deleted every text message and call between himself and Daniel. A later forensic review of his device confirmed those messages had existed before they were removed. Roper admitted all of this on April 20th. He wasn't arrested until July 9th. 80 days sit between a documented confession and an actual arrest. In that stretch, by every available account, Roper went back to school and finished the semester, living a completely ordinary life, the same ordinary life Daniel would never get to return to. Tamika Erving spent those same 80 days doing something no parent should have to do alone, speaking out again and again, with no guarantee anyone in a position to act was listening. Community organizations in North Texas, including the Next Generation Action Network and a group called Texas Justice Seekers, began working with the family not long after Daniel's death, helping keep public attention on a case that, without that pressure, might have moved even more slowly than it did. In June, the Next Generation Action Network sent an open letter to Dallas police demanding action. CNN reported that it had directly asked Dallas police why it took more than 2 months to arrest Roper and the younger boy, after Roper's own admission, a question that, per that same reporting, had gone unanswered. It remains one of the central open points of this case, and it's treated here exactly as that. An unresolved question, not a guess dressed up as an answer. This is the part of the story worth pausing on, because it's the part most people find hardest to sit with. If it's affecting you the way it's affected us putting this together, let us know in the comments what stands out to you most so far. We'd genuinely like to know before we get to where this case stands right now. When the arrest finally came, on July 9th, it followed a signed warrant affidavit dated the day before. Roper and the younger boy were each booked and charged with one thing: tampering with physical evidence, a third-degree felony under Texas law. Not murder, not manslaughter. Roper was released the same day on a $10,000 bond. Dallas police spokesperson Erica M. Brown confirmed the arrests in a statement to media, describing the case as a tragic incident, extending condolences to Daniel's family, and stating that both cases would proceed through the criminal justice system. Tampering with physical evidence is a real charge with real legal weight. A third-degree felony carries genuine consequences in Texas. But it's a charge about what happened after Daniel went into the water, not about the drowning itself. No one has been charged in connection with causing his death, because no evidence made public has established that anyone caused it. That distinction is exactly what Daniel's family and their legal team have refused to accept as the final word. On July 13th, the Next Generation Action Network held a press conference at its Dallas headquarters, where Daniel's family appeared alongside the organization's president, Dominique Alexander, family attorney Sean Deredia, co-counsel Blair Mamosi, Reverend Ronald Wright of Texas Justice Seekers, and Crystal Bates of the NEO-8CAP's DFW chapter. "Something smells off to us," Deridia said, pointing to Daniel's swimming ability, his physical condition, and the 4 days his body spent in the lake while the 2 people who'd been with him went back to their ordinary lives. The following day, a second press conference brought a new name into the case, civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who had joined the family's legal team. Crump is also representing the family of Nolan Wells, an 18-year-old who drowned in a separate, legally unrelated incident in a different state that same summer, a case Crump has publicly linked to Daniels, though no charges have been filed in the Wells case at all. Crump told reporters the family was seeking whole justice, not partial justice, language he repeated at more than one appearance alongside Tamika. Tamika herself, at one of those 2 press conferences, put it simply, "Why would you throw away his clothes and delete messages?" She said she wanted justice for her son. She said it plainly, because by that point, she'd already said it more times than anyone should have to. What remains true, stated as plainly as the record allows, no trial date has been set for either suspect, and no plea has been entered on the record. It's unclear whether Roper or the younger boy have retained their own attorneys. Daniel's family and their legal team are pressing the Dallas County District Attorney's Office, led by John Crusoe, to take the case before a grand jury and weigh homicide charges. No such referral had been confirmed in the most recent reporting available on this case. It's worth explaining, plainly, what a grand jury referral would actually mean here, because it's easy to hear murder charges and assume that's simply a matter of prosecutors deciding to file them. Under Texas law, a murder or manslaughter charge requires evidence that someone caused a death through intent, recklessness, or criminal negligence. What's currently on the record is evidence of what happened after Daniel drowned, not evidence about what caused the drowning itself. That's the legal distinction Daniel's family is asking a grand jury to look past, and it's also the exact distinction that would need to be overcome for any charge beyond tampering to hold up in court. Neither outcome has been decided, and nothing in the public record settles it either way. There's also a competing account worth including here, because leaving it out would make this story less complete, not more dramatic. The mother of the younger suspect has said publicly that her son actually tried to help Daniel while he was drowning, a claim that runs counter to the fled without helping framing that shaped most of the coverage, including press conferences held by Daniel's own family. No independent source has confirmed or disproven this claim. It sits in the record exactly as it was made. One mother's account of what her son did in the water, unresolved against everything else that's been alleged. Race has also been part of how this case has been discussed publicly. Daniel was black. Roper and the minor have been described in multiple reports as white. Advocates, including Dominique Alexander and attorney Ben Crump, have both explicitly framed the 3-month gap between Roper's confession and his arrest as evidence of unequal urgency in how the case was handled. That's a claim made openly, on the record, by people speaking on behalf of Daniel's family. Not something asserted independently in this documentary, but something that shaped the public conversation around this case enough that leaving it out would misrepresent how the story has actually unfolded. That means this isn't a story with an ending yet. The medical examiner's ruling of accidental drowning still stands. The only charges filed so far are for what happened after Daniel went under the water, not for the drowning itself. Whether that changes, whether a grand jury weighs in, whether new evidence surfaces, whether the minor's mother's own claim gets examined more closely, none of it has been settled, and nothing here will pretend otherwise. What is settled is this. On an ordinary Monday afternoon in April, 3 teenagers went into a lake outside Dallas, and only 2 of them came out. What one of them did, in the hours and days that followed, is now the subject of a criminal case. And what his mother felt on that very first day, before she had any of these facts, turned out to be something she was right to trust. If this is the kind of case you want us to keep following as it develops, Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens if this goes in front of a grand jury. And before you go, if you'd watched your friend go under the water, would panic really have cost you one phone call? Tell us what you think in the comments. Daniel's family has said they aren't done asking questions. Neither are we.